I wanted to put together a set of projects that will allow me to explain you a little bit our mode of work, our ethos, our principles, and our pursuits. I think that really for me, architecture, first of all, is a way of communicating. It's a language. Is not what I do, is what I am. But in a way, my way of going and finding this language to communicate with others is by finding the others. I'm really in a moment in my process that I would really love. I know it's impossible, but I really love to be the other, to understand what this person's needs, wishes, beliefs are. No, understand them. Not only understand them, but live them. No. I try to understand them as much as I can, but I would really like to pursue the idea that I could really be the other in order to produce things for the other. And in this sense, this is why I call these, for me, a new essential nature. I believe that it's essential now to act in a way of understanding the other person, being the other, not for the other, being the other, and then acting. I think I've been shaping this idea since the early starts of a project that has really been very, very challenging, or was very, very challenging, which was a pilgrimage route we did in the state of Jalisco. State of Jalisco is a state in the center of Mexico, where there's a Catholic pilgrimage route that goes from many little towns to one town named Talpa de Allende, and it's a place where there's a Virgin or Rosary that many people venerate. This procession happens every year during Holy Week, more or less. That's the most intensive time of the year that happens. And it's 3 million people, more or less, that walk 150 kilometers in average towards this church. Along the way, there was nothing. There used to be many interventions of people that they were helping the pilgrims to go through the journey. So it's not never been like before an intervention of the government or of the state or by anyone or any association that could really support this. So there was no infrastructure, no nothing, only the things done by the people. No, although it's a very interesting and important ritual, it has been passing for 200 years. There really nobody had seen these people before. So it was very difficult for me to understand the place. It was very difficult also to think that I could do it by myself. And therefore, I for such an important ritual, for such a spiritual moment of the people that devote themselves to walk for 4 or 5 days for a cause to really make their wishes to a virgin, for me was very important to find a collective way of understanding it, if there was one. So I asked my colleague Derek Delecam, who's an architect also in Mexico City, to team up first to start thinking how we could act in this place. No, I was approached by the government, by the Minister of Tourism, saying that they really wanted to impulse this pilgrimage because of economical reasons for the region. No, these people live throughout the year for the pilgrimage, by the pilgrimage, and with the money that the pilgrimage gives every year, no, every Holy Week. So these people produce their own places, their own little stalls, their own worship spaces in there. The economy, it's also like moving around, and the landscape is hyper vast. No, it's super incredible landscape that obviously in 150 kilometers changes a bit. It also changes people are going from more or less 100 meters above the sea level to maybe 1,500. So the people walk really high. So Derek and I decided to put together a group of architects, basically not only architects, also from different disciplines, ecologists of landscape, designers, industrial designers, thinkers, but also architects from different parts of the world. And we did that because we thought it was a good idea to open the minds of the actors, confront them with really different realities in order to see if it was possible to understand, or at least to act from a place where we know or understood that there was no possibilities to really deeply understanding the place, the act, or the spiritual act. So we obviously went there. We defined like a route. We helped the government tracing like this master plan of places where we could act, we could add infrastructure. And then we chose, basically very democratically, who was going to act where. The government wanted to do specifically like interest points, open chapels, points of reunion, spiritual places where pilgrims could gather or could identify themselves in the first phase. And so this is the first thing we did. So we did 8 interventions along the route. There were 10 proposed, but we did 8 in the beginning. And we decided to do them in a pace and in places specifically where the rhythm of the pilgrimage could be logical for them to arrive and feel like they could rest or they could wait for their family members. And in this way, we decided the pace. We decided also the places by looking into very carefully into the route and understanding where we could also do it, because obviously it depended also on the property of the land and the intervention of the government, of the capability of the intervention of the government. So it was a complicated process, but we finally decided where to put these spaces. The first thing the government wanted was like a statue that would mark the commence or the start of the route, and we decided to create an open chapel. And we decided to do it, Derek and I, like the initiators of this idea, and we decided to do the most like simple symbol of Catholicism, which is the cross, also like that marks the holy space. So we decided to create a cross almost virtually with 4 walls that erect from the ground, and that mark also are visible from many places, and that mark like almost the start of this. No, it's also not only a place for worship; it's a place for reunion, a place where people could put their vows for what they're walking. It's an identifiable point for the pilgrims, because this is normally where they park their buses or their cars, or family members left them there. So they start walking here. Many reunite here to walk. And it's also nearby a little town, a very small town that obviously, as I said, lives from this pilgrimage every year, and that could also use this space as a public space. No, so the people of the place use it for as a playground. As a shadow area, because it gives a very large shadow. Many things that on an everyday basis, but the pilgrims use it as an identifier point and a start point for the route. No. So this point is also visually, as I said before, able to be seen from many places. And also from there, you're able to see the next point. So as a point of reference, as a way of going, as a way of marking the path, we decided also to create this structure that is very present from many kilometers, but also link it to the next one. And the next one is done by Swiss architects Christ and Gantenbein from Basel. And they decided also to do that, to mark a point of arrival, a point of interest, a point where pilgrims already in the past were meeting, a point where already a lot of vendors, informal vendors, were installed, still are, providing food and a little bit of services to the pilgrims. But the point that Christian Gantenbeck did doesn't only marks, it's not only a column, it is a space. It's a space that could also become a spiritual place, that has become a spiritual place. People enter there, you're by yourself, you're coming from this huge hill to the top. You're tired, you arrive there, you wait. Normally some people are slower than others, so you wait, and you can enter there by yourself and spend a little time by yourself to continue your pilgrimage. No? The next point along the route, you don't see it from afar, so this was also a little bit a decision, that you don't see all the points, but you encountered some of them. Not by chance, because the route is there and it's almost quasi-traced. It's never traced, but everybody knows the way. And so the wall that you find here is a wall done by artist Ai Weiwei, and he decided to create a wall that, in a way, and obviously people there, local people, call it the Chinese wall. I don't know why, but it is a little bit a reference, or more for the artist was the reference of materializing the possibility of you becoming part of the landscape, but also you becoming you in yourself. So the wall goes in the landscape, puts you back where your individuality is like taking care, or expels you and opens you to the landscape. So this wall, in a way, that you don't see from far, you just encounter it, and you create this pilgrimage towards itself, going there. The next stop, or the thing you encounter next when you walk, it's a shelter, and we decided to create the shelters nearby the towns, because in a way the shelters could also not only function as shelters, which they do, and they work very well, but they also could work as buildings, multi-purpose buildings for the little towns. So we thought to use the same resources to create two things. So for us, it was very important not to only support the pilgrims that are working there, but also the little towns that depend on this pilgrimage. For once, we were going to do an intervention in these places, which is not very usually happening. So we decided to create these as multifunction rooms that serve as shelters when the pilgrimages happen, but serve as multifunction areas when the pilgrimage is not happening. And this is done by Luis Aldrete, another Mexican architect, and he did the same type of construction with the same materials, but it's adapted into every site where the shelter is. So it's not a repetition of a structure, it's an adaptation of a system, a building system that adapts to any site that the shelters are in, because they're very, very different. They are placed in different orientations and these things. So the system adapts itself, and we've built 3 till now, and the idea is there are 8 along the route. No? The next point you encounter when you walk, almost like in the middle of the pilgrimage, half the way there, it's a structure done by HHF, who also are Swiss architects, and they created this kind of playground. I like to think of it as a playground, because the kids that live around have benefited very much from it to be there. It's an observatory. It's a place. It's a structure itself that you have to pilgrimage also to go up, and then it becomes an observatory of the landscape. It becomes also a point of encounter, but as I said, also the playground of these little kids that live around. You continue walking up the hill, and the highest point you reach, it's called El Cerro de las Cruces, and this is where the structure of Alejandro Aravena, a Chilean architect, is. And he decided to do only this super urban, strong concept of a box, a concrete box on top of the middle of nowhere, and creating like this possibility of placing you totally breaking your idea of where you are, but also enmarking the landscape and bringing you to focus for the landscape with its two framings in the entrance and in the back of it. So this is the last point on the hill. Then you start going down. When you go down to the town, towards the town, you encounter this circle, which was done by Derek Delecam, the Mexican architect who we share the program with, and by Rosana Montiel. And what they did is just encircling the landscape with a wall that also is a workshop space, a point of encounter, a place for meditation, a place, or just a place to pass by. And then you encounter the church, which is been renovated through the years. So it has not a strong architecture, not history, because it's been removed and new. But still the spirituality that goes behind this place is amazing. So in a way, this was transcendental at the end when we realized that it didn't matter what we did finally. The worship, the spirit, and the people are really making the space. They're really making the ritual, regardless what happens to the church for 200 years has changed so much that regardless that, the spirituality still continues, no? And we were really, really worried to at least not disturb it. And we were very happy to understand that when the first pilgrimage that happened when the structures were already there, the pilgrims were very, very happy because they thought that, or almost all of them that we interviewed, that they were taken care. You know, nobody would have done ever nothing for that pilgrimage route. So they were very happy that people were taking care of them, at least doing something. And then little by little, year by year, they started like taking over the pieces. And the first time we arrived and we saw that the spaces were taken over by graffiti, we were really scared. And we thought that really something was very wrong with them. And then we realized that by graffitiing the structures, the people were starting to appropriate them. And they were graffitiing the vows there. So the way, why they wanted to walk this route was written there. Who was walking was written there. So family, blah, 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 Martinez, 2016, no, pilgrimage of 2016. So they were making their history in those little spaces where before they didn't had any to do. And for us at the beginning was hard to understand. Also architects that we want our spaces to be completely pristine and kept as the way we did them. Was very hard to understand, but at the end, I think that this was an incredible understanding. First of all, that we didn't understand a thing about what our structures were going to do there. But secondly, also, that regardless of the architecture, the people were really going to take over these spaces, no? Regardless of what we did. So probably if we were not careful and sensible, which probably we didn't, I don't know, maybe not, but what we did, regardless what was it, was really taken over by the people because the spirituality took over, no? For me, that was really beautiful and was a little bit, as I said, like a moment where I realized that to act is very, very necessary to become the other, no? In the way, when we did that, we were doing a botanical garden that we're still doing it. It's a botanical garden that has existed for 35 years in a city named Culiacan. And this city might not sound like anything to you. It's a city in the northwest of the country. But in Mexico, the city has a very bad name because it's the city where all the drug dealers come from, the most powerful ones, no? So Culiacan is the capital of a state that is an agriculture state. This agriculture was and now it still is very strongly developed there, the good agriculture and the bad agriculture. So now, obviously, they cultivate half and half, probably marijuana and opioids and these things. And so they have become very strong capos there, and the city is known in Mexico, around Mexico, because of that. But there's a lot of things there, obviously, and it's not only that qualifies the city, and therefore there is a lot of people interested in changing the face of the city. And there is an interesting man, a businessman, that has a very interesting collection, contemporary art collection, that is also the president of the board of this garden. So 12 years ago, he invited us to intervene in this garden and to help him think how we could blend or merge or at least introduce contemporary art in this garden. This garden was done by an engineer that had a passion for plants and was done in a very intuitive way. He decided to convince the government to allow him to put his plant collection in a public space. And he got a pretty big space for it, and then created this garden over the years in a very intuitive way. He had never a training in biology, but he was very passionate, so he learned a lot. He never had like an architecture training also, but he did a garden or a landscape training or a planning training, but he did a garden by himself. So when I arrived, I saw that the garden was very, very loved by the people, was very shared, was very used by not only scholars but elderly people, and already had some art that was there before we arrived. No. I realized that it was a place not only for education, so the botanic part was important because that was the purpose of the garden, but was also a place for recreation. Many people went there just to spend some hours, meet people. It's in the middle of the city, a city that it's, I could say, an average city in Mexico in terms of size, in terms of configuration. But it has a river in between, which that doesn't happen in Mexico. Happens here a lot in Europe, but not in Mexico. We don't have rivers. We don't have many rivers in the country, but this city has and doesn't take advantage of it. And the garden was pretty amazing. I mean, it was really wild. But for me, that was the problem. We architects, in our minds, we always think everything needs to be completely planned and organized, and that's what we do. No, we do planning and we organize things, and at least my mind before that was that I needed to organize things. So I arrived there, and it made me a little bit nervous the way the garden was designed, or it wasn't designed. And I thought in my mind I needed to find a way of organizing it. No? So my first reaction was to think, what is a garden? What is the history of gardens in Mexico, public spaces? We have in Mexico City one of them, the first park done with the purpose of a park in America, so which is the Alameda. So I went really into the history, trying to understand the past, the future, thinking on what is the future of public spaces, what it meant to be that this garden was a public garden, a public botanical garden, and what we could do. No, so I really studied the garden in many ways. I went there many times before I made a proposal to work there. The garden also serves as the place for people to take the pictures of the most important days. So the wedding days, or the 15-year-olds in Mexico is a very important tradition. When girls turn 50, they do a big 15. They do a big party, and so that is a big day, and they take their pictures in this garden. So it's really regarded in society, this place. No, it's very important for people that are there. So people go there for many reasons. They do spontaneously many activities. So for that reason, I decided that it was important to think that this garden needed to be very organized in order to introduce a new order, which was the art. And one day I was talking, as I said, I went like continuously for 3 months to the garden. And when we created a team of experts in botanics, of experts in landscape, of curator, the people from the garden itself, the people from the city. And we were always as a group trying to think in just talking and thinking a lot, no? How to intervene in this place. And all of a sudden one day I said, we were walking there and I was just saying things out of the blue. And I said, don't you think we should do here a yoga pavilion? I mean, imagine how beautiful we could do a beautiful structure. People could do yoga in this beautiful center here. And this guy, who's Enrique, the gardener, made a funny face and said, yoga pavilion, why would you do that? And I said, well, there's a lot of people doing yoga. Haven't you seen them? And he's like, yes, but, and yeah, he just said that. And then weeks later, I realized that why he was so strange to my idea is that if I would do a yoga pavilion, I would have killed the activity, because people would have to create specific schedules, maybe a teacher, maybe even paying for the classes. And then the spontaneity of how it happens now in the garden would have been totally killed. And this is where I realized that that was the only way that we could think we could act. We couldn't continue thinking that we were going to arrive in there and impose things, but we needed to understand the space in order for things to almost emerge from the place. So still, stubborn enough, I did a plan, because we architects do that. So I did a plan, and I did a plan that it was more for me to understand how really to intervene and where to act. And what I did is I decided to trace the branches of the most the species that is most there, which is the tree of Guanacaste. And I decided to overlap that drawing with the existing garden in order to see if that would allow me to create a system for me in my mind to intervene. And it did. It was generous enough to allow me to introduce things wherever they were necessary, but still follow a system, and still also would allow me to understand that system could be translated into the way we design the architecture. So as I said, the garden is immersed in this city, in the center of the city. And it was already dense enough for us to allow us to put structures. But we still decided to understand what were the plants, botanical terms that were more represented there, and what were the ones we wanted to enhance, what were the ecosystems we could understood that they were there, because it didn't seem very likely that we could. And at the end, we understood that the palms, for example, were the most represented species of them all. The palm collection was very important, had very incredible species, and it was completely spread out in the garden. In order to create a logical way of seeing the collection of the palms, we decided to create just a very simple link, which was a bridge in this pond that existed. In this way, we connected part of the collection as a path. We created, for example, a pond in the bamboo collection. The bamboo collection was the second largest collection there. So we created a pond that would help the ecosystem to work, enhance the collection of the bamboo area merged with the palms, creating just visitor spaces or resting spaces in some key point, introducing hammocks in some others, or really just trying to protect the species that are delicate from the public, but also allowing the public to still do the things they do as they were doing it before, no? For example, another operation we did was just to open the irrigation system so you can see it, because till then you didn't understand how the irrigation happened in this garden, which is a just very simple procedure of gravity, of water flowing with gravity. And therefore, we only open it so people could really see it, see how it worked, and maybe also even use it as an amusement thing, or as a place to read or to rest. Or we open little paths in places where you couldn't access before, or we introduce some species to enhance also the landscape, the beauty of the landscape in some others. And the same did the art, which was really something that we didn't completely pursue, but obviously was something. So as I said, the businessman who is the president of the board of this garden, who invited me, before inviting me, he invited a curator, a contemporary art curator named Patrick Charpenel, and he convinced the businessman not to only introduce an art from his collection, but to commission artists to go to the garden and do a site-specific work. And this was very important because in this moment, then the artist interacts with the space. The pieces that creates obviously have a total different possibility for it, no? So this piece was is done by Laura and Calzadilla, who's a couple of American artists who decided to do this. And obviously by doing an operation like this, you are changing completely the way the user or the people see art, especially in a place like this. And this was something really interesting that we didn't realize in the beginning, but we realize it completely now, and now we even encourage it. When we introduced the art in the garden, we created a link with art and people and society in this city that it didn't existed. With the same amount of money, obviously, and even a little bit less, we could have done the perfect museum, the perfect white box, completely with the conditions to exhibit the best exhibition of art. We could have done really traveling shows, putting the collection of these businessmen in the garden, but we wouldn't have been able to create the relationship with the people and the art that is created here. In this city, and in many cities in Mexico, unfortunately, people don't grow with art. Art is not part of their everyday. It's not part of their education. There's no museums. There's no collections normally. It's very specific places that there is, and it's very elitistic. Normally it's concentrated in Mexico City, and in the towns around the country, it's really not something that is a quotidianity like here in Europe it is, no? So by introducing art this way, now we are creating an incredible culture in the city, which we never imagined, really, literally, of people now looking for art, now trying to learn about it, now trying to understand it, now asking for art in the city, which is really just the consequence by allowing people to understand art in an everyday way, no? If we would have done the white box, nobody would have gone there, and we wouldn't possibly created the relationship that we have. No, this is the past one, a piece by Adrián Villarrojas, who's an Argentinian artist, a piece by Dan Graham, and also a very renowned artist from the United States, who obviously has become the frame for wedding pictures. A piece by Francis Alice, an artist that is a Belgian artist that lives in Mexico City, that crashed his beetle in the garden. And obviously imagine how amused these people were until they understood that it was an artist doing it. A piece by Olafur Eliasson, who did just a simple pavilion that is covered by a plant that really changes through the seasons. And in Culiacan, normally people tend to think that there's no seasons, that it's just one, which is hell, because it's super warm, it's super hot. But it does. It actually changes winter, spring, summer, and fall. And this plant is always changing and tells everybody that the seasons are really changing, and it's very beautiful. Normally in places like here you see them very clearly because the plants change so easy that you really see the seasons happening, but in Mexico this doesn't happen, no? So it's a beautiful intervention that allows them that. Or for example, this piece by Richard Long, who never visited the garden, of course, but this piece was set in a public plaza in New York, perfectly untouched, with no intervention, and in Culiacan has served for picnics, for shooting of commercials or different things that ever can happen probably in a different type of society that is really more close to art and taking care more of the art. But as using it as an everyday really has helped the people to understand the possibilities that art has. No, for example, this piece is a piece by an artist, local artist named Teresa Margolles, and she has been dealing with the subject of drug dealers since the start of her work, and she decided to do this super comfortable benches. That's what she says. I'm not so sure. In a very beautiful environment with shadows, etc., etc. But they are done. The concrete is poured in with the water that was used to wash bodies that were bodies that passed away because of the drug dealers' problems, or assassinated or involved in a crime issue. And so she took this water from the morgue and she poured the concrete like that. And in the beginning, we did the benches, and the artist wanted to put an inscription on the benches saying what the process of how they were done was done. But we weren't able, because of technical reasons, we couldn't put those inscriptions as she wanted. So it took us a year to put the inscriptions. And when we did, these three ladies were completely outraged because they were really using these benches every day. And when we told them how they were done, they were really outraged. They called the media, they called the government, they called, obviously the garden, and they created a big fuss. So the garden decided to bring the artists, and the artist did a lecture for everybody, especially these ladies. And now these ladies are the biggest fans of the garden. They understand the why these benches are done like that. They got involved with the artists. Now they friends with the artists, which is really kind of funny, but it is. And now these ladies are really the first promoters of all the art that is happening there, no? So in a way, they went into the process of art, no? Very shockingly in the first moment, but then really getting involved with what art is and what these possibilities are, no? So art here, beyond the doors of a museum, beyond the way art should be displayed, has really transformed a place with incredible incredible speed, that has really been also allowing us to go further and further. No, this is a piece by Marco Rountree, Roman Ondak, Valesca Suarez. I go quickly because it's 45 pieces already installed. James Turrell. So art is really becoming stronger and stronger. We are dealing with the possibilities that the garden has, obviously, to deal with all those big pieces, especially this one is super big, and to understand how to connect them, how to link them with what existed, how to really allow the visitors to enjoy them the way the garden should be. But we also want always to think that we can, by many ways, remind not only the user, but also the same place itself, the garden itself, that this is a botanical garden. That this is furthermost, and the most important thing is that it's a botanical garden, and how we could create little things that really reinforce that idea, no? So we have this incredible program of the art. We have all these recreational things that are happening there, but how we can enhance the garden and really remark that it's a botanical garden for the most important thing. So our buildings are trying always to do that, and all the expressions of them that we have done are towards that idea or message, that they transmit the idea that you are in a botanical garden and nowhere else these things could be. So the first building we built was a pavilion that was asked to be like a small auditorium for a small projection, 7-minute projection, introduction of the garden. So people, when they go there, they can hire an audio tour, and the audio tour comes first with this video. So they wanted a room, like an enclosed room with air conditioning and these things. And we said, we do a pavilion, and there you have the introduction for 7 minutes. People, it was very difficult to convince them because people are used to live with air conditioning rooms everywhere. The heat is really high. But I said, well, if you are going to visit the botanical garden for 3 hours, because that's how much it lasts, the audio tour, you might just sit 7 minutes to watch a video in a comfortable place, in a beautiful place, and with the shadows and using really nature, or using the resources of the garden to protect you and to allow you to see it. Obviously, this place now has become a very interesting discussion place, meeting, lectures, cycles of cinema, small cycles of cinema have happened there. And it was just really doing a small, simple operation of creating 3 walls that could allow us to have a vestibule or an entrance space, and that would then allow us to have these space for watching this small video. And that for me, it opens a possibility of you to understand that architecture is just to support the activities that are happening there and not just to impose things, no? Obviously, architecture is always impositive into a place, but could be that imposition be in a good way or in a bad way. And we always think that how that relationship can happen, no? How that relationship with nature can extend, nature can extend its arms to like reach the architecture, or the architecture also can do that to enhance the landscape or frame it. So that operation, that strategies were always in our minds when we did all the architectonic operations. And the second pavilion we did was like a set of 3 buildings. And why we did 3 buildings instead of 1? Because exactly the same idea, that we want people to be always reminded that you are in a botanical garden. The program here is a small room for kids, an auditorium for small lectures, is larger than the first pavilion, and a service area. And so these 3 buildings just talk to each other. They are composed from this system, as if you remember the system I decided for my mind to organize the garden, organize not the garden, but organize the intervention. And only the structural ideas that they are like concrete, reinforced concrete shells that they just support themselves, and that supports the space physically but also intrinsically, and that supports the activity that happens there. So there's nothing else but just the walls that form the roof and the floor. They're made of 30 centimeters concrete. In Mexico, we can do these things. I know here it's not possible, but we can do them there. And it really also even works for the weather. And the whole thing, by dividing these things, is that you're always reminded that you're in a botanical garden, because to use, for example, the bathroom, you have to go out, and if it's raining, you get wet. Yes, I'm sorry. And if it's nice, if you can hear the birds, you hear the birds. But you're always reminded that you're in a botanical garden, no? So this is the vestibule of the lecture room. This is a room for kids, and as I said, it's the idea of playing with the reflection, of playing with the windows, of the views and the shadows, is again to always remind you that you are in a botanical garden, no? I think that the strategy applies always, and it doesn't look the same, and there's a reason. Art is always being in contact with the architecture in this case. Sometimes the artists decide to really intervene with it. This is a piece by the bumps in front are a piece by Tercero un Quinto. Sometimes the artists really are confronting the architecture, and sometimes the artists also went away from the architecture, no? Also, we have promoted the idea that nature takes over the building. So by obviously understanding where the water falls, where we direct the water, the rainwater, we are allowing this nature also to take over the buildings, so the buildings in a way can start growing and being part of the garden itself. The operation that we've done, as I said, has been happening through 16 years. Now, or 2005, no, less, a little bit less, sorry, 13 years. And so our architecture, our approach specifically towards aesthetic definitions of spaces has changed through the years. So this is why you are going to see completely different buildings. And I think I have understood through the years that the possibilities of geometry are immense, and that we don't need to explore these experimental geometries and rare structures, but very regular forms and shapes. We can do the same, and we can even do more, because in an economy like us, we can do more, no? With obviously a regular geometry. So we did a new set of buildings that were asked for us later in a later stage, 8 years ago. This is a storage room, a room for the employees, laboratory, an herbarium, and eating facility for the employees as well. So we did the same operation of exploring the program in the most possible divisible part. We did the same operation of using one material that would allow us to do everything, to become everything, the shell, the structure, the insulation, the aesthetical final definition, which in this case is concrete block, but we did a completely different approach, in aesthetically speaking, in terms of geometric form, because we were evolving. No, this was years later. Here's another piece by Pedro Reyes. Those tools are done by an artist in Mexico, here you can see that we reduce the costs to the minimum in order to allow also the possibilities of the space to become larger, no? Because we had a restricted budget. The other building we built after that one, after the storage area, is the entrance, but this was designed before the storage area, but was built later. And this is the same strategy. It's an office building and the shop and the ticket area, and it's just the entrance that has these umbrellas that would mark just protect the people by entering, make the waiting easier, the lines easier, but also marking the entrance, no, the place where you should go into this botanical garden. This was recently finished, maybe a year ago, and we continue working. We now do a greenhouse that will be open for the public, for orchids, and we'll do a library, an exhibition room, a small exhibition room, and a pottery workshop. The operations are little by little, and this also has allowed us a very interesting piece of working with the place and the place working with us that is very rare in Mexico. No? Mexico, really, when you are asked for a project, it had to be done 5 years ago. So we're always late, no? And this is something that in Mexico doesn't happen. I don't know why. Maybe we are up to the speed of the United States, where everything has to be done, as I said yesterday. And I really think that by this project that has allowed us time to think, by intervening in the same sense, has also given us so many possibilities of changing, of understanding, of repeating, or learning by mistake. No, that is really incredible in a project. The operation, in a way of understanding the relationship of architecture with landscape and with nature, is something that is very present in our work, and I think in a way probably is a possibility that is the start of the process of understanding the other, no, or being the other, no. When you do it with nature, which is a more static or less self speaking person, is not a person, can really allow you to confront many things, no? So I think that relationship is very important, very present in our architecture. In this case, we were asked to do a house in a mountain in Monterrey, which is a city, the second largest city of Mexico, and we were asked to do a weekend house for someone that lives in Mexico City, and that really wanted a space that she described as, I want a place in the forest. I have this piece of land in the middle of the forest that allows me to understand the forest, but by watching it and not living it. I don't want any bugs in my head or in my face or anywhere. I just want to be immersed in the forest, but not live with it. So we did a pavilion, or a series of pavilions, 3 pavilions that have, that really, like, first of all, the first one has this rejection of nature, but also has in the interior the possibility of welcoming it, but also is the first place or moment where nature becomes confronted with the architecture, no? So it's 3 small pavilions. Sorry that it's very light. The first one is a space where the more public activities of the house happen. The kitchen, the living space, the dining room, a small, very small room in the back, and the other 2 pavilions are more the sleeping rooms, the private rooms, no? So this public one, in a way, as I said, is like reflective towards the nature, but in the interior, it's bringing you to the nature, multiplying you to the nature by this possibility of the reflecting mirror from the outside, no? We decided to use 3 materials, 3 basic materials, which is glass, brick, clay brick, and wood. We used 1 material primary in each of the 3 pavilions. So in this case, obviously, is the glass. The secondary material is the brick tile that we decided to use to create the screen or the floors, and the tertiary material in this case is the wood. The second pavilion, that it's scattered in the forest, also the idea is that you have to create this procession in between nature, yes, with the bugs and everything that she didn't want it, but she's in the forest and she also wanted to live in the forest, to the rooms. So you have to create this procession and then confront yourself into a completely different structure that the definition is the clay brick that we designed. So the whole structure is designed with the brick. The structure, it is the brick also, it holds the house. And then the wood that forms the interior space and that creates all the possibilities for the space to be livable and usable, all the functions needed, no? So the clay brick becomes, again, the main material, the definition, the aesthetical definition of the place, the structure, the acoustics, the thermic definition, and then the wood just frames it and makes the work, no? The third pavilion, which is not built yet, is a pavilion done by wood. So, as I said, we use 3 main materials. 1 is a main material in each of the 3 pavilions. And then also I think that this language or these repetition allow us to understand the complete language of the proposal of the architecture that it's immersed in this place, no? I think that by translating the client's needs, there's a very important operation that we do as architects, no? I think that, as I said in the beginning, not only building for the other, but trying to be the other is an important task. And in this case, we were approached by a client that arrived to our office and said, she described her ideal weekend house that she wanted us to build. This is a place in the shores of a lake in a state, the same state where we did the pilgrimage route. And she lives in Guadalajara, which is the capital of that state, and she had this beautiful piece of land in this small town in the outskirts of that lake. And she described the house as, I want a house with a big living space, double heights, views to the lake, towards the hills, huge rooms with double heights also, in suite bathrooms, open kitchen, blah, blah, blah. So she described an extensive program. And when she finished it, in my head, it was like 300 square meters, 300 to 400 square meters with important open spaces, blah, blah, blah. And when she was leaving, she said, by the way, but I only have 1,500,000 pesos, which is more or less like 75,000 Swiss francs. And I was like, okay, and she left. And I was like, okay, now I have to make the call telling her that, well, or she has to decrease her ideas in half, at least, or she has to increase the budget in double, at least, no? And that was already tight, but it could have been possible. So, and I was almost about to call her, and I thought, well, she's gonna say, okay, Tatiana, ciao, then I cannot do it. And she's gonna go with a local contractor, and the local contractor is gonna do a horrible thing, and we were not going to do architecture. So I said, okay, we better take the challenge. We do a house of 300 square meters with 75,000 Swiss francs. Okay, we do it. So first of all, I thought, okay, the first thing we need to make her understand is that it's a difficult task, and the first operation we have to think is how are we going to achieve that task. And for that is we needed to find a material that would allow us to achieve that task. A material that was really so generous enough to give us the possibilities of creating the extension of the 300 square meters. Secondly, to give us the possibility of the heights that she wanted to achieve. Thirdly, that the material would become everything again, because otherwise we couldn't do finishes, we couldn't do insulation on the side, we couldn't do structure. And so this way we started discarding materials. Wood is not an option. In Mexico, we cannot build with wood. Wood is very expensive. We don't have good quality wood in the country, and we have to import it, so wood is out of the question. Still out of the question is a structure that needs another material to be covered with. Brick also wouldn't allow us to take the possibilities all the way there. Concrete out of the question, so only earth was left. Earth from the ground from that site. We tested it, it worked, and then we started understanding how the earth acts, how is built, how it's done, and because we never built with that before in our lives. And then so we started then understanding the material, understanding the process of construction, and then we design. We had to design with our minds that we had to use the material in its normal performance. We couldn't do more or less, because then we would waste money or spend a lot of money. So we had to use the material in its best possibilities, but within the best performance. So we understood that we needed to modulate the house. We understood that it was not possible to create like organic forms, that it was way better to use geometric forms. So we did that. We had that in mind, and we created these volumes that are 4 squares overlap into each other, 2 facing a tree, 2 facing the landscape, and the main 2 that create the open spaces, the other 2 that create more the residual spaces of communication and services areas. So the main 2 squares that are in parallel to the lake, towards the lake, hold the more public and private programs of the house, and the other 2 hold the service areas, terraces, open the spaces for hallways and these things. So as I said, we just tested the possibilities of the earth. We decided to use it in a specific way so we could layer it in different colors so we could give a sense of scale. We decided, we had to really use very simple finishes, with very simple operations, because otherwise we couldn't achieve the amount of space we needed. But I think at the end we really stretched the budget in a way that we were able to do it. The client was very, very happy with the house. And now we're doing her permanent house in Guadalajara is under construction at the moment. Something really funny that I'm just going to say here is that we worked with the client for 5 years to do this house. We worked very closely to understand the materials, and she was really immersed in the process. And therefore, we thought we knew her completely. I thought I was almost becoming her, understanding her completely. We could really design because we really spend a lot of time together, especially with this process of understanding what material we could use. And when we started building her house, her permanent house, I discovered a totally different person. And it seems that we act differently depending that the space, whether we're building or we're living. And she definitely lives in a completely different way in her weekend house than in her permanent house. And that was something very interesting for me to learn. But we learned it. And it's something that is also making me understanding the possibilities of not only the architecture, but the behavior of the person, no? That I a little bit said in the pilgrimage route. The operation of understanding this relationship, not only with the costs and the structure and the possibilities of the space, of the physical site of the earth, is also something that is present in our work. And we were asked to do a house that is kind of a not an experiment, but a little bit probably. So it's in a beautiful site in Spain, and it's a piece of land that a designer bought, and he's married to an art producer, and he decided that he wanted to encourage architects to do architecture as artists do art, and to promote a little bit the possibility that architects can freely work liberated from the client and the program, and commission architects to do houses or structures. We can use structures to sell them after. So he had already built two from Pezzo Bornerichhausen, which is a couple of Chilean architects, and another one by an office from Belgium. And those are built, are done, and we are asked to design one. And in the first place, we did a proposal that it's a structure that it's a very difficult structure to pilgrimage, but it's a pilgrimage structure that will take you to do an effort to pilgrim into or towards or upwards to the landscape, but also inhabiting the structure. At the beginning, I said, unfortunately, the government rejected our idea and didn't allow us to build that because it was too disruptive to the landscape. And now I say fortunately, because we created a second proposal that I think it's even clearer for us, and it's really helping us way better to understand what we wanted to do and intend in this situation, which was really putting you, the user, in the landscape and forcing you to use it in different ways and to see it and contemplate in different ways. And so we created a strategy of doing one module that had aesthetical variations. And why? Because we wanted scatter in the landscape and then allowed to be used as anyone wants, no? So it is a module that, as I said, multiplies or divides itself and differentiates in shape. It's scattered through the landscape that has different possibilities of understanding it, but also of using it, no? So the places don't have a special definition. They are just scattered there, and you can use them as a room or as a playing room or as a dining room or as a kitchen. So the bathrooms have fixed fixtures, obviously, so they're less flexible, but still the possibilities of the space are very flexible because they're not directed, no? And they're not labeled, and the user can use them as they are, as they want. So this is something that it's very important now, presently in my pursuit, and is to maybe not only think that you could become the other, but the architecture can become that, and the architecture can become whatever that other person that is using it can and wants and is, and by probably yes imposing, because this is imposing a form with no doubt, but not imposing a program, no? So not imposing also the possibilities that this can change over the years or over the time, but also that can change for the use and by the use, no? And this possibility was really explored in a project that we presented very recently for also an experimental idea of houses by different architects in Germany. This is the Lake of Edersee, and we decided to, instead of starting with the program that they gave us a program of 2 rooms and a bedroom and a bathroom and kitchen. We decided to understand if we were able to design with emotions, activities, and human movements. And we charged them, we highlighted them, we chose the ones we wanted, we then collaged them by just really literally cutting things that our references, and collage them together to really give us an image to that idea of space that we wanted to define. So we're using also the collage for a process of design, not only of representation, but also a internal process of design. And by using it, we are also introducing a lot of things that probably don't go together, no, if you can say, or by adding pieces of different ways of approaching places or spaces or definitions or colors and or cultures, even in this case, to really allow us to define a more, let's say, universal or I don't want to say generic, but yes, universal space that more people can identify to. And so we defined 6 spaces, and then after the collage operation, we did a drawing. I did a drawing that would really allow me to understand where these spaces should be placed in the space 3-dimensionally, and then we designed the house. So this house, I don't know if it's going to be built, but it's really resuming a lot of the ideas that are behind the way of approaching design that we have now. And we are extrapolating these possibilities into many ways, no? We're doing this operation for a master plan of a new community place in San Francisco, or even applying it to a very small pavilion that we're doing for children in a school in Mexico, no? In a possibility of allowing then architecture to become a platform for everyone, for the other, to explore, to extend, to live, to be, and that really, and then for me, it enhances life, no? And with this, I think I end up my presentation. I thank you very much, and I wish that you, if you have questions, that I wish you could really express them to me or comments. Thank you very much.